We, as an early stage startup, like many others, we cannot compete with the open AIs of the world on salary and on benefits. But there are some unique things that early stage startups have as assets that any larger company with more resources doesn't.
Hiring has always been rough for startups. That's not news. What's new is how the smartest founders are using the tools available to them to get an edge in this hyper-competitive market. Welcome to Talent War Tactics, a new show where we surface the best use cases founders and hiring managers rely on to close top talent at startups. In today's episode, I sit down with Troy Sultan, CEO and co-founder of Guide. Guide is an AI-powered interview scheduling platform. Hiring managers from teams at OpenAI, Duolingo, Klaviyo, and Robinhood use Guide software to elevate their candidate experience. Here are 3 things that you can expect in our convo today. 1. How to make stellar, branded candidate portals that will drive high-quality interviews in less than a week. 2. Why Troy thinks hiring needs to be P1 for all early-stage founders. And 3. How to run an anti-sell play when doing a first phone screen. Let's get into it.
My name is Troy Sultan. I'm one of the founders of a company called Guide.co and a bit of a masochist around recruiting automation and recruiting software. It's my second startup in the recruiting space. I've come from the world as a recruiter in early stage and large companies, and about 10 years ago kind of ventured out to try to solve some of the pain that I felt in that role. And today we run Guide, and Guide is a recruiting automation company that uses AI and all of the latest other tech that we have available to automate a lot of the administrative parts of the recruiting process, like coordination, and deliver a really elevated experience to all of the candidates as storytelling and differentiation becomes increasingly important in a really competitive market. The first software company that we built, my co-founder Austin and I, it's called Resource, and we were in prospecting automation software, or in CRM for recruiting teams. We were only about 25 people at the time, so quite small, with 0 recruiters. Yet we really needed to hire. And so as a product and engineering team, we hacked together some ways to automate the things that we felt were vital to our successful hiring process. One of those tools would be a very early version of Guide to help automate the delivery of a highly personalized candidate experience and tell our story more effectively. We actually got more excited about that internal tool than our core business. That core business was acquired by another company in the recruiting space that we competed with, but we kept just that tool and spun it out into Guide. And now we sell that as software that helps enable other companies to automate a lot of their administrative hiring work, which really bogs things down, to accelerate the hiring process, which gives them a competitive advantage, and provides a really effective vehicle to tell their story in a world where a lot of our interviews are digital and candidates are remote. In short, I think a startup's only asset, for the most part, in order to hire the top talent that they need in order to survive and thrive, is their story. We, as an early stage startup, like many others, we cannot compete with the open AIs of the world on salary and on benefits. And sometimes even on the brand allure, the prestige is so strong that even if we did compete on those fronts, which we often can't, we would still largely be at a disadvantage. But there are some unique things that early stage startups have as assets that any larger company with more resources doesn't. Typically that involves some narrative, a company narrative around your mission, the particular problem that you're solving, which is perhaps different from the problem other companies are solving, which might resonate with particular candidates. The ability to frame that really well, and the impact that somebody can have at a company.
In other words, you won't beat big tech on comp or brand, so you have to win on story. At Guide, Troy anchors that in 3 beats: their mission, the hard problems they're solving, and maybe most importantly, the caliber of candidates they're looking for, emphasizing an outsized impact on day 1.
Folks want visibility. Culturally, we expect transparency and visibility in a kind of a real-time status check at all times. And our software is designed, some of its features, to automate the delivery of that. But more importantly, we will craft a story using our candidate portal, which is a part of our software that we sell, to tell our own story. And that enables us to clue the candidates in on some of those really important points that I've mentioned, like what are the nuances of our culture? We welcome candidates with a video from me often, or the hiring manager, before they enter the process. You can really get to know the people and the team. And you can automate all of this with software, or partially automate it with clever use of free existing tools out there like Google Docs or Notion and other things.
Let's make this concrete. When a candidate books the first call, trigger a simple home base. Not fancy, just useful. It should show 4 things. 1, what's next? A plain timeline of the steps. 2, who's who they're going to be interviewing with. This includes faces, names, and LinkedIn links. 3, prep pack. Stage-specific docs or examples so they can show up to every interview ready. And 4, the story. This is your mission, the hard problem you're solving, and the day one impact the candidate can have. As you schedule each stage, unlock the next prep so that momentum continues between calls. The payoff: fewer back and forth emails, better questions, and faster decisions. And be intentional with the narrative. Show the constraints so that the right folks lean in and the wrong folks self-select out. Candidates reward transparency. Because the bar is so low, a simple home base gets immediate positive feedback. And in practice, Troy says people keep coming back to it as their source of truth. He's seen candidates revisit the portal 12 times per interview stage, checking what's next, who's who, and he's receiving less any update emails. This leads to better prep and faster decisions.
While software can help fully automate a lot of this, early stage startups sometimes don't have the cash or the time to invest in tools. It's also something that you can do in a more lightweight way with free tools that you might have, like Google Docs or Notion. And I'll just say that back in the day, before we built the first version of Guide at our last company, it was actually a string of Google Docs that we built. It was quite manual, but it still effectively helped us tell our story in a way that made us stand out from the pack. And we had many folks join our team that referenced specifically the prep documents, or interview guide, as we called it, that helped them realize that we were both more transparent and trustworthy than they felt than other companies that they were interviewing with.
Quick reality check. You can ship a candidate experience like this in 1 to 2 weeks. Here's how. Step 1, pull your role and interview flow into one place, like your ATS or a Google Sheet. Step 2, write the story for the role. Why now, what they'll build, and who they'll meet. Step 3, go live. The trick is using whatever you already use to schedule, whether it's a calendar, Calendly, or your ATS, to trigger the candidate home base. This is what cuts the back and forth, keeps momentum up between calls, and still leaves room for the human moments. And as Troy said, don't be thrown off if you don't have an official ATS yet. A Notion board or a Google Doc is perfectly fine. You can layer in automation later. The experience is the point. Of course, it takes more than branded candidate portals for someone to take a chance on your startup. It's why another tactic Troy is a staunch believer in is running an anti-sell play during your interview process. This is where you try to convince people all the reasons why they shouldn't join your startup. He breaks it down.
We actually really try, ironically, to hire as a last resort. This is especially important, we find, for us in the AI age. So what happens when our company culturally understands, groks fully, that hiring is not an option? We immediately go to what can we automate or make more efficient. When hiring is an option, it's a little less of a strong of a muscle to go there, no matter if you want to or not. So we've found that before we open a hire, we kind of try to purposefully constrain that responsibility set on to people that probably shouldn't be doing it or can't do it because of bandwidth. And it forces an immense amount of creativity and experimentation amongst whatever AI and automation tooling is out there. And the more of that you do, you build into your initial foundation, the more the first impression and the modus operandi of the next person coming in to join your company, that's going to be just the way you operate. So it's going to compound. They're going to come in and enhance that version of your culture.
So to recap, if you must hire, run the anti-sell. Founders should take the first screen and the final call. On the first call, give the pitch and the price, the mission, the why now, and then the real constraints. These are all the chaotic parts of working at an early startup, like having a very thin management layer, constant thrash, and the folks who thrive must be able to self-serve prioritization. On the final call, do the formal anti-sell. Spell out the realities that make people quit at month 3. Then pause. If they lean in after that, you've got high signal fit. If they don't, you just saved both sides months of frustration.
It sounds very odd, but when you break it down, in our experience, the things that should turn away people end up exciting exactly the people that we want to hire at this stage.
To close things out, I asked Troy what advice he'd give himself if he was starting a hiring strategy from scratch as a first-time founder. Here are the strategies he would rely on.
Hiring is as existential to your company as sales. You need to own it. You need to set the tone for the cultural priority, and you need to lead by example. So hiring that next candidate is as important as closing the next deal and having more revenue lifeline for the company to survive. In order to do that, you have to own the process early, build the process out, and lead by example. You will also be the most savvy person to decide what both can be automated and the most compelling storyteller at your company. And so owning these components will compound throughout your culture if you're an early stage company, and it will eventually be something that everybody at the company prioritizes, and you'll have a really powerful recruiting team, which will really be everybody at your company, in the way that they speak about the company, in the way that they're unified in understanding that the most high priority thing they can do is help the company hire amazing people. They'll always have that top of mind, and that compounds in a way that helps give you a competitive advantage that most companies can't emulate if they wait too long.
Marching orders from Troy. The founder needs to own hiring. Design the process, automate the admin, and tell the story yourself. That cadence will compound into a company-wide recruiting muscle. If you take one thing away from this episode today, founders who hire win. So make it a habit. See you next time.